Thanks for tuning in once again to New England Patriots Talk on the Our Football Network. It's Pat's Probe with Evan Lazar, CLNSmedia.com. You can also check out Patriots coverage now over on the YouTube channel for the Patriots Press Pass. And that's also, of course, where you can find Evan Lazar. Evan, good talking to you again.
Good talking to you, Greg. Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been since the draft. So a lot going on since then. Of course, the big news regarding the quarterback that we spoke about right around draft time, Mac Jones, is now the man. And it's interesting because when you had told me about everything going on with Cam Newton behind the scenes and that he was still Belichick's man. He was still the guy, the number one guy. And even though it seemed like Josh and maybe others would prefer Mac Jones, a better fit for the offense, once the off the field stuff occurred, I remember talking to a few people on the air and telling them, especially once Cam was let go, I wasn't surprised. And I wasn't surprised because of what Evan told me. Because to me, he was hanging on by a thread to begin with based on leadership. And once the leadership went down the drain, that's it. So it shows you once again why I need to talk to you so I find out what's going on with the New England Patriots.
It felt like the Patriots decided to avoid delaying the inevitable and just rip the Band-Aid off, right? They could have kept Cam around for a couple of extra weeks. Maybe they start him the first 6 weeks, and go in a way that we had discussed a lot on our channel, just like the Miami Dolphins did last year with Tua, right? And Ryan Fitzpatrick, where Tua's coming off an injury, you want to ease him into it, and you get him out there week 6, week 7. But the Patriots felt like Mac Jones right now gives them the best chance to win. And I can't necessarily challenge that opinion because based off of what they want to run, and it's very crystal clear that Josh McDaniels runs Josh McDaniels' offense. Josh McDaniels is not going to sit here and change his offense for anybody that he hasn't handpicked. If he went out and he drafted Justin Fields or he drafted Trey Lance and that was his guy, then maybe they would have curtailed the offense to a little bit of a different style. But they went out and picked a guy that fit the system to a T in Mac Jones and just decided to stay the course. And with Mac, Cam was better this year. There was no doubt about that. He looked better within the offense. His timing and rhythm was better within the offense. But Mac is just such a great stylistic fit for what they want to do. Quick through his reads, accurate to all 3 levels, a really cerebral quarterback pre-snap with his ability to get the offense into the right plays, the right protections, all those types of reads that the Patriots put on the quarterback to make sure that the offense, as McDaniels calls it, the table is set. Right? They want to get out there and they want to set the table based off of the pre-snap read so that all 11 guys can play fast and just go. Right? They don't want anybody sitting back and saying, oh, wait a second, we're in this play call. They're running that coverage. This isn't the right call. Like, what do I do? Sure. Right? They don't want that. They don't want hesitation. They don't want any real questions on the fly. They want everything answered before the ball is snapped. And Mac Jones just does a great job of setting the table on top of the things that he does after the snap, like reading the defense and throwing the ball accurately. And all throughout camp, it felt like Mac Jones was every day just getting closer and closer and closer. And I don't think that there was a surprise from anybody that the Patriots decided to go with the future. And that's what Bill Belichick said today on the radio, finally talking pointedly about this situation because he's dodged questions about releasing Cam for about a week now. This morning, the Greg Hill show on EEI finally got him to give a real answer about Cam. And he said, Cam's a great guy. He's a great worker, but Mac is our future. And we just decided that the future is now. Right. And there's really no reason for us to hang around and wait around. So Mac Jones, the quarterback for the Patriots, and it makes all the sense in the world just based off of everything that we have seen.
Yeah, because look, if Mac wasn't ready, Cam would still be here, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
And it's interesting as we go over the roster because we talked about the manipulation last year, and it's kind of funny because right now the Patriots do not have a backup quarterback on the roster. But we know what that's about. We'll get into that in a minute. And Quinn Nordin made the team, which I was
He did.
shocked about. But Nick Folk's on the team. He's not on the roster, but he's on the practice squad. So how does that? Let's talk about those situations right there. How is that going to work on game day? And is Norden basically going to be given the chance, and then he's got the short leash, and then they could always switch? Or how is that going to work? And then who's going to be the backup? Is Hoyer going to be moved up on game day to the number 2 quarterback spot?
Right. So this is a Bill Belichick roster manipulation loophole that he has figured out with these COVID protocols. A big part of the COVID protocols for the practice squad is that you can elevate players the weekend of a game to be active on game day. Game day elevations is what they call them. So you're allowed a couple of those every single week. So what the Patriots can do is they can carry an extra player right now on their 53-man roster, and then on game day, elevate Brian Hoyer from the practice squad to be the backup quarterback for Mac Jones. So instead of forcing one of these younger players that they like through waivers and potentially losing that player on the waiver wire, they can use this roster loophole, keep everybody protected, and know that Brian Hoyer is not going to get poached or signed by another team because, quite frankly, Hoyer is not very good anymore, first of all. Second of all, Hoyer is way more valuable because of his institutional knowledge of the Patriot system to the Patriots than he would be to, let's say, any other of the 30, the Green Bay Packers, the New York Jets, whatever team you want to throw out there, any of the other 31 teams. So I say this all the time about Brian Hoyer because people ask me this question constantly. Why is Brian Hoyer still here? Because there is definitely, he's 35, 36 years old. We saw what it looks like when he actually gets out in a regular season game against Kansas City last year when they had to start him due to Cam catching COVID. It's not the prettiest in the world at this point in Brian Hoyer's career. There has to be somebody more talented that can back up Mac Jones than Brian Hoyer. Cam is more talented than Brian Hoyer. And that's absolutely true.
Sure.
But he knows his place. He knows the system like the back of his hand. And there are only a few people in the NFL world, I would say Josh McDaniels, Tom Brady, and Bill Belichick, that know the Patriots playbook better than Brian Hoyer, right? I mean, he has really got that expert level. So he's allowed to be elevated on game day. He will be to back up Mac Jones on Sunday against the Miami Dolphins. For now, Belichick gets away with this loophole. As far as the kickers go, I'm not ready to say that Quinn Nordin's going to be the kicker for the Patriots on Sunday quite yet. I think the Patriots were concerned that Nordin was going to get claimed on waivers if they released him on cut down day last week by a kicker needy team. We saw him all throughout training camp get oohs and ahs because of how big this leg is. Like, he can kick the ball 60 yards, make 60-yard field goals.
That's never been his problem.
No, he has got an absolute cannon, as the coaches like to say. And the Patriots went out there. They had him kick a ton in preseason games. He was inconsistent. He was 6 of 8 on field goals, and he missed 3 extra points. So not good, right? But he has a ton of natural kicking ability, a ton of natural talent. So some of these special teams coordinators, like the Patriots, have a guy in Joe Houston who is a kicker aficionado, kickers and punters. That's what he works with primarily. They think Houston, Cam McCord, Belichick, who has a special teams background, obviously, they think they can fix him, right? And they were concerned that one of the other 31 teams was going to say the same thing and poach him on waivers. So they keep him protected on the 53-man roster. They get Folk back on the practice squad. I'm still not sold that Nick Folk is not going to be elevated and made the starting kicker on Sunday. Yeah. You feel a little bit bad for Nordin because we talked to him last week, and it was clear that he felt like he made the team, right? I made the team. I'm the starting kicker. This is amazing. I'm the starting kicker on an NFL team. I'm not 100% sold yet that that's going to be the case.
Aren't you surprised that they didn't talk to him?
I'm sure that they're on the same page behind the scenes. But I think making the 53-man roster gave him a lot of confidence in himself, as it should. But the one thing that you hear them say about Nordin that they really liked, he in the second preseason game against Philadelphia, he missed 3 consecutive kicks, an extra point, 2 extra points, and a field goal. And then he came back in the fourth quarter of that game and nailed a kick late in that game. And that ability to have a short memory, bounce back quickly, the Patriots like that. They thought he showed some good mental toughness there that didn't completely unravel. And they obviously love the leg. I mean, there are times he's kicking to the near end zone and out at the training camp facility at Gillette Stadium, and he's kicking it out of the facility, right? I mean, the ball is landing, and you're worried about where you parked your car because the ball is flying so far off of his foot. So he's got a cannon, but they're going to have to make him more consistent because right now he's a very inconsistent kicker.
I mean, I'm a Michigan fan, so I know I've been through Nordin for 3 years, I think it is, and very, very inconsistent. I think maybe he made that kick in the fourth quarter because he's used to missing them. I just think it's just, hey, all right, I always miss these every once in a while. I'm okay.
And he was nails to start training camp. The first 2 weeks of training camp before they got into preseason games, he was terrific. I mean, I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but he was making everything from everywhere and had very few misses. And you were sitting there saying, this isn't a competition. I mean, this kid's unbelievable. And then you get into some of the preseason games, you get to some of the joint practices with the live rushes and stuff like that, and things changed quickly.
Isn't that the case? I mean, the Jets are in the same situation with Amendola. I was like, when they picked him up originally, I was like, they pick him up. He ain't going to be around. They need someone else on the roster. And then, wait a second, but there's no Nick Folk. But the Jets are in a different situation than the Patriots. The Jets are throwing out a ton of young guys, and they're just going to live. But I think it's really good because we talked about the Patriots situation last year heading into the offseason about what kind of team were they going to be. And it's almost like the Mac Jones decision with leaving Cam Newton out has almost forced their hand now to become that team for the future. That, of course, they're going to try to win, and they have enough talent that maybe they could fight for a playoff spot if Mac Jones is every bit as good as they're hoping. But now it's more about the future, and I think that's a good thing.
And they've made those decisions in a couple of spots. Obviously, the big one's the quarterback, but the kicker, the running back room, trading Sony Michel, going with a guy in Ramondre Stevenson, J.J. Taylor in that backfield as well, who are 2 younger players. Taylor, second season, Stevenson, obviously a rookie. On the defensive line, Christian Barmore from Alabama, their rookie, their second-round pick from this past draft. I think he's going to have a pretty major role. So they're looking at 3 rookies from their 2021 class, which is great. That means that they made good picks. But in Mac Jones, Christian Barmore, and Ramondre Stevenson that are going to play a decent amount of snaps for them this year on a team that has playoff aspirations. Last year, they had played a lot of young guys out of desperation because they had so many opt-outs and injuries and things like that. But this year, they actually want those guys to play on a team that does have veteran players because they have proven worthy of it in training camp so far. So Stevenson makes Michelle expendable. Nordin makes Folk expendable. Barmore comes in, carves out a role. Mac gets Cam cut from the team. So that rookie class is looking very good.
All right. Let's break down more of the roster. You mentioned Michelle, and I was ecstatic since I chose Sony Michel in my Dynasty League draft. I took him late, like in I don't know, 14th round out of 20 or something like that. But I did it because I figured that after we had talked, and I kind of figured he'd be around this year, or at least until the deadline. But then I was looking at the future. That's what the Dynasty League analysis is about. So I was ecstatic when he got traded to the Rams as now the full-time number 1 more than likely for the Rams. But how surprised were you that, because Stevenson wasn't exactly hitting it all cylinders heading into like preseason games and late, into training camp, but something, the light turned on? Was it game action? Was it like, is he a guy that just plays better when he's actually on the field as opposed to practice?
There definitely are some elements of that, and he's an extremely natural, gifted ball carrier. He forced more missed tackles eluded more tackles in the preseason than any other running back. Now, he also got a lot of carries in the preseason, so it is a little bit of a volume stat. But in terms of yards after contact, which is now the sexy term with all running backs, what are you doing after the blocking breaks down, after you get into the second and the third level of the defense? Because a lot of that first 4 to 5 yards is predicated on the offensive line, right? So it's what you do after that with the ball that makes you a difference maker. And Ramondre Stevenson in the preseason really flashed those skills to not only run over people at 230 pounds, but also elude people, and has a very, very sharp jump cut ability, can get out of guys' tackles in a phone booth. And the other thing I would say that maybe they're hopeful he does a little bit better than Sony Michel is contribute in the passing game. And the Patriots typically have 2 roles for running backs. They're very role specific with running backs. You can kind of tell what they're going to do and who they're in terms of situation based off of who's in the backfield. When Damian Harris and Sony Michel have been in the backfield, notoriously they're running the football. When James White's in the backfield, they're obviously throwing the football. And they have tells like that, they do. But then on occasion, there is that hybrid, right? That can do a little bit of everything. That can catch the ball, can block in pass protection, and can run the football.
That was Burkhead, right?
Rex Burkhead was that type of player. You want to go back a little bit, Dion Lewis was really the best thing that they had in a couple of years when he first got to the Patriots in that type of role. And they are hopeful that Ramondre Stevenson can develop into that kind of guy. Ivan Fears, Patriots running backs coach, who is easily the best quote on the team. I mean, he's a lot of fun to talk to. He came out and was extremely candid about Ramondre Stevenson early on, basically telling us that Ramondre Stevenson has sucked in training camp. That's essentially what he told us. He said Ramondre Stevenson came in into the summer program and failed the conditioning test on day 1. Failed it. Couldn't finish the conditioning test. That got him in, obviously, hot water to begin with. Got him put on the physically unable to perform list because he wasn't conditioned well enough. And it just felt like every other rookie Patriots running back for eternity. Redshirt year, right? It just felt like this guy was going to... They had Damian Harris and Sony Michel in that early down back role, both very capable running backs, and it just felt like Ramondre Stevenson was not going to see the field as a rookie. Harris didn't see the field as a rookie. James White didn't see the field as a rookie. The only guys that typically see the field as rookies for running backs for the Patriots are first-round picks. Sony saw it, obviously played a ton in 2018. Going ways back, Lawrence Maroney played a ton in his rookie season. If you're not drafted in the first round as a running back by the Patriots, you typically sit your rookie season. Sounds like they have different plans for Ramondre Stevenson. I think J.J. Taylor is going to factor in there as well a little bit, too, as a change of pace to the bigger backs, as more of a scat back type. And that made Sony Michel expendable. And Michel did nothing wrong in training camp. He had a solid camp. He caught the ball a little bit better out of the backfield. I thought he looked more confident in his route running and his ability to catch the football. But those 2 young guys just made him expendable. And the team in that position, knowing they had Damian Harris, I think, too, is a huge factor. And James White, 2 really steady veteran players. They were willing to go in terms of the backup roles with the younger guys.
All right. Now, as far as the receiver situation, bringing in Bourne and Aguilar, that's the big news. Harry is injured. I mean, so his career with the Patriots is going swimmingly. What's up there? Who's looking like going to end up being the number 1 receiver, wide receiver for the Patriots?
Right. So the Patriots will push back on me every single time I mention number 1 wide receivers, because they think that's fantasy football, Madden, garbage, right? So, but because that's how we talk in the media, Jacoby Myers has been the best receiver all summer long. He was the best receiver on the team last year. He's the best receiver on the team so far this year. With that being said, Nelson Aguilar's role as a deep threat, I wrote about it today on clnsmedia.com, is absolutely vital to this offense, because last year the Patriots were second to last in explosive plays through the air, right? Throws of 20 plus yards. They were almost dead last. They were only a couple off dead last, and they just didn't have any. Damiere Byrd was their deep threat, and that is not exactly a great spot to be in. And everything, it felt like, everything that they did offensively happened within 20 yards of the line of scrimmage, right? They are playing in this little box, right, of within 20 yards, and the
Oh
safeties
yeah,
were creeping up to play the
very
run.
easy
They
to
were dumping
defend.
those intermediate routes. It just was too simple. So Jacoby Myers is their best receiver, their most consistent pass catcher. He is going to eat between the numbers, and Mac Jones has that quick release and that ability to process that underneath coverage. I think the two of those guys are going to get along swimmingly. But Nelson Aguilar's role as a field stretcher is vital to everything that they're going to do, because if they're going to keep those safeties off of Myers and the tight ends, if they're going to make those guys respect the deep threat to get off the running game, if they're going to make them play two deep safeties instead of just one deep safety, which the Patriots saw a ton of last year, it's going to be because Nelson Aguilar is making teams pay for crowding the line of scrimmage. And he's really the only, still, they are a very, very slow skill group. If you add up the 40 times of their projected starters, they are still dead last in terms of combined 40 time, right? Somewhere around 4-6 is this team's
That's
combined
not
40
good.
time.
No.
The only guy that's fast is Nelson Aguilar, and he's going to have to be that guy for them.
And of course, they're going to use those two free agent tight ends an awful lot as well. As either one of them, Smith has looked a little bit better only because Henry was a little banged up, right?
Right. So Henry's been banged up for the last couple of weeks, but he's going to play on Sunday. And because he's been banged up, we haven't seen the two tight end package a whole lot in training camp or in the preseason. So in a way, you worry about chemistry, continuity, that sort of thing. But this might actually play into Josh McDaniels' hand. I think what Josh McDaniels is going to put out there on Sunday with their 12 personnel with Henry and Jonnu is going to take the whole NFL world by surprise in terms of what exactly they're going to do. If I'm the Miami Dolphins, I'm probably going back and watching the 2010, 2011 Patriots with Gronk and Aaron Hernandez to try to figure out something about what they're going to do, because you just have seen so little of it in the preseason and over the summer that it's going to catch a lot of people by surprise. Hunter Henry, when he was out there, he's your traditional chain moving threat between the numbers tight end, right? In line, maybe some in the slot. He's just going to run crisp routes. He's going to get to his spots. He's going to be good at the catch point, but he's not overly explosive. He's not a flashy playmaker down the field. Johnny Smith has a little bit of flash to him. He's an explosive route runner. He's a guy that's very, very good with the ball in his hands, as we know from his days in Tennessee. And he's going to be the chess piece, right? He's going to be the guy that McDaniels moves all around the formation, sends in motion, lines him up in 5 different spots every single week. And it's going to be, where is Jonnu is going to be a little bit of a chess match for the defense. And the Patriots are going to find all sorts of ways to get the football in Johnny Smith's hands and watch him run with it.
Should be very exciting to see how it all works starting week 1, of course. And then we'll see after that how it does work once everybody has a little film on the Patriots. But still, nobody's got the 2 tight end talent. I mean, Atlanta maybe, but I'm not so sure there's many other teams that have the type of dual tight end that can really scare an opposing defense. One more on the offense, and that's the offensive line. And so Trent Brown is back at right tackle, Wynn healthy at left tackle, and Onwenu moves in to guard. On paper, it looks like it's going to be another strong unit. Once again, maybe one of the best offensive lines in the league. Tell me I'm wrong.
You're not wrong. On paper, it looks fantastic, especially as a run blocking unit. They have great size, great play strength across the board on the offensive line. Isaiah Wynn's a little bit undersized for a left tackle, but he's a really solid run blocker despite his size, just because of his technique and his footwork and his athleticism. So they're going to be a menace blocking on the run in the running game, and especially that right side of Shaq Mason and Trent Brown playing next to each other are 2 bulldozers over there. That you get into 3rd and goal at the 1 yard line, the Patriots are running off the right side every single time. And it's good luck, right?
And hand it off to Stevenson.
What we're going to do. Yeah, we know what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And you know what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And you still can't stop it. That's going to be the mentality when it comes to short yardage running. Onwenu's obviously a huge guy as well. That helps out too. if you have to look at one mini concern with the group, you do wonder what their ceiling is in pass protection, right? Because they have some bigger guys. Trent Brown is a great pass protector. He has been a great pass protector his entire career, but he did seem to maybe have lost a step a little bit with the Raiders last year in pass protection. If that holds true, Michael Onwenu is a 340, 350 pound guard who's very good last year, but maybe can be threatened a little bit in pass pro. Jack Mason's always been a decent pass protector, but certainly a much better run blocker than pass protector. Wins solid all the way around when he's healthy, but the question marks with his health are always going to follow him. So this group as a run blocking unit is going to be fantastic. The group as a pass blocking unit should be still above average, but it might not be as elite as it is as a run blocking unit.
Do they have someone on the bench, anybody on the bench, that if you said, well, if we lost this starter at this position, we're not going to be as bad because we have this guy on the bench?
Well, I think on the interior, Ted Karras is their top backup, and he started last year with the Miami Dolphins, and he started the year before that with the Patriots when David Andrews was out for the year. So he's a starting caliber interior offensive lineman. So if Onwenu or Andrews or Mason goes down with an injury, they should be able to insert Ted Karras into that spot and get by with him being in there. At tackle, it gets a little bit more murky. I would say Justin Haran, who they drafted last year along with Onwenu, is a solid swing third tackle that they like. He's not quite as good as Onwenu is, but they found another guy late in that draft that looks pretty solid. Still, if one of the tackles go down, if Brown or Wynn were to go down, my guess is Onwenu kicks back outside to tackle like he played in his rookie season, and Ted Karras goes into the starting lineup at guard,
Okay.
and that would probably be how they would get by.
By the way, who is the to begin the season, who's the short down back? The lead number one.
Good question. So Stevenson, that feels like a role that he would do very, very well. And if they don't want to put too much on his plate early, having him go in there as a goal line, short yardage back predominantly and have him learn that role, it feels pretty good. Damian Harris is the guy they're going to ride, though. If you're a fantasy football guy, I would not hesitate to draft Damian Harris this year. He's going to get a ton of carries.
And by the way, Malcolm Perry, he's on the team. What's that about?
Belichick loves these types of guys, right? Guys
that just former quarterbacks, running backs,
just do everything. He called him a wing back, which is going a ways back to days of veers and all sorts of old school offensive terminology, playing a hybrid role, wide receiver / running back, playing some in the kicking game. The Patriots will find a use for him. They definitely have a plan for him. I do think that there is one element that you lose, obviously, with Cam is the legs, right?
Sure.
The scrambling ability. So motions, end arounds, jet sweeps, handoffs to receivers, to guys that you may not be expecting to get the football, just to add something of a threat out of the backfield with some speed, I think could be a factor in this offense now. That's what they used to do with Brady. Lots of end arounds, motions, jet sweeps, that kind of stuff. So maybe Malcolm Perry factors in there.
And by the way, Ben Mason, who's on the practice squad, I was surprised that he didn't make the Ravens. I thought he was a perfect fit for the Ravens. And clearly the best fullback in the draft class. So is he somebody, or just in general? And before we get to the defense, I figured I'd ask you about, and we were talking running backs, about Mason and whether or not either Mason or there's another player or two to keep an eye on from the practice squad.
Mason's a good find for the Patriots. My understanding is that they wanted an opportunity to draft him, and the board didn't fall that direction. They ended up trading their pick in the 4th round to move up to draft Christian Barmore, and then before they could get back to Mason in the 6th round, Baltimore scooped him up. So it just didn't work out for them in the draft, and I think that they're pretty ecstatic that they're able to get their hands on Mason now. Jakob Johnson's been a really capable lead blocker. He's come a really long way from converting from defensive end to fullback in the NFL. He's a defensive end in college. Now he's playing fullback in the pros, and they love his development. He's a great, hardworking guy, has really done everything they've asked of him. But Mason feels like a player that could be the fullback here for the Patriots for a long time. This could be somebody that's around for the next 5-10 years, and they've had those in the past. James Devlin was here for forever as a fullback. So the Patriots are ecstatic that Ben Mason was released by the Ravens and somebody that they could pick up and now hold on the practice squad and battle it out with Jakob Johnson.
Is there anyone else out of all the players right now on the practice squad, any of these no names that, hey, keep an eye on this guy?
Christian Wilkerson had a nice camp. They were able to get him back on the practice squad. He tailed off late, started really hot, tailed off late, didn't make the team. But that looks like a player. He was working very closely in practice with Matthew Slater, Justin Bethel, and some of the coverage specialists on special teams. And I think that they envision him as a fourth or a fifth wide receiver and a guy that can contribute in multiple phases on special teams. So he's still a developmental player they want to work with. Trey Nixon's also on the practice squad, their 7th round pick from UCF, who showed some ability out of the slot, I would say more so than out wide, has some good shiftiness, can get open on those little option routes that they like to run inside, a la Julian Edelman, Wes Welker. So I think he has some ability as well, but those two guys weren't good enough to make a competitive roster, but are certainly people that they are hoping can develop into players for the future.
Okay, now on defense, tell me up front, you mentioned Barmore. So
yes.
What about, of course, you have ex-Jet Henry Anderson, who, for whatever reason, just didn't really play well last year. But the first year with the Jets, he was really good. And I remember the only reason he didn't work out with the Colts was because it wasn't the right scheme. He goes to the Jets. The scheme fit him perfectly. And it looks like maybe this is a good scheme fit as well. So talk a little bit about Anderson, and also, are we going to see the next step for Chase Winovich?
It's been a weird camp for Anderson. He's played a lot in these preseason games late in the preseason games, right? Fourth quarter snaps, things like that. And that always gives you pause. When a veteran player is playing in the second half of the third preseason game, you wonder what's going on here, right? And I asked Belichick about it a few weeks ago, and he gave a really complimentary answer of Anderson about how many different roles he can play and how versatile he is. He can play from 0 to 9 technique and all these things about how great he is and how much he can line up all over the line of scrimmage. And then I'm sitting there saying, well, thanks for the answer. That was great. But you're playing him on the final drive of the third preseason game as an 8-9 year veteran. Right? So what you're saying is not matching what your actions are here with Henry Anderson. So I do wonder what his role is going to be moving forward, just because he did have, at least in the coach's eyes, it seemed like he was a little bit on the bubble towards the end of training camp. So be interesting to see how much he plays and what their role is. Maybe a few years ago, Jason McCourty in 2018, he played at the very tail end of the final preseason game and then goes on to have the biggest play of the season against the Rams in the Super Bowl. So this happens, right, with guys, and maybe he can be a Jason McCourty that ends up carving out a huge role in all this kind of stuff about summer snaps and things like that go completely out the door. As far as Chase Winovich, just a really fascinating situation with him every single year, because the Patriots, their scheme does not exactly fit Winovich, his style of play. Winovich is an attacking player. He's somebody that wants to pin his ears back, get after the quarterback, and be, quite frankly, reckless.
Probably would fit well with the Jets, actually.
Yeah, he just wants to go out there and hunt the football. And the Patriots want you to be disciplined on the edge. They want you to collapse the pocket, not lose contain, set the edge against the run, and be a lot more of a lunch pail type of guy, right? Just bring your hard hat and make contact and push that pocket and don't lose the edge and be more of a positional player. Whereas Winovich wants to just get after the football wherever it goes. So
doesn't this make you wonder, and we've talked about this before, the whole draft process? I mean, why
Yes.
would you draft a guy like this if you know his style and yet you're going to try to change him?
Right. And I think they drafted him because first and foremost, he fell a little bit in the draft due to his size concerns, and that he ended up being the best player on the board when they
Okay.
came up to pick
Okay.
in a lot, according to a lot of
Okay.
experts, right?
Sure.
He was late third round, mid third round, and a talented guy for that spot. I think the second thing is he does have a great work ethic, right? He does work at his craft really hard, and he does have that patriot type of mentality when it comes to work ethic and willingness to put it all in and everything like that. He just doesn't play like a patriot. He just doesn't. And he doesn't talk like a patriot either, to be honest. Very long-witted with his answers, a little bit candid with his answers at times. Has gotten him into some hot water with the coaching staff.
Okay. Interesting. All
So
right. And what about
I
Uche,
don't
the
know.
other Michigan guy?
He's looked great. He's looked fantastic. Really, really good stand-up pass rusher on the edge of the defense. Basically, everything that they were hoping Winovich would develop into, Uche has kind of taken that mantle
Okay.
and run with it.
And
Just a really fast, explosive playmaker.
and he could end up. It's possible. Look, Judon was brought in to help out, no question, as far as the pass rush, and
Yeah.
Van Noy. You don't know what you're going to get out of him. But is that Uche's role? Is that hopefully in the next couple of years he's their? Could even be this year. He's their number one edge rusher.
Between him and Judon, yes. Judon has been absolutely dynamite in the preseason. Looks like a home run signing by the Patriots. The three things that the Patriots asked their edge defenders to do, and we break this down a lot because that role is so important to the entire puzzle of Bill Belichick's defense, especially the strong side edge defender on the same side as the tight end. They want you to set the edge against the run, so contain the running back, push him back into the middle of the field. They don't want to give up the corner, right? They don't want the home run around the edge. So they make you set that edge. They want you to occasionally drop into coverage off the edge. They have some different schemes where they'll run those middle linebackers up the middle on a blitz and they'll drop the edge defenders, or they have them peel off into the flats and zones or coverage on the running backs coming out of the backfield. And then, of course, rush the passer. And Judon does all three of those things extremely well at 260 pounds. So he's got the play strength to do it and what they want him to do. He's got the IQ. He's got the athleticism, a player that the defensive backs on the team have said when they go, the Patriots have a hill behind their practice facility that they run after practice every single day.
Okay.
And the defensive backs have said that Judon keeps up with the skill players on the hill. At 260 pounds, he's running stride for stride with Devin McCourty.
All right.
Right. So this is a freak athlete, size, speed type of player. Exactly what they love at that position. Think of guys like Willie McGinnis, for example, to go back a little bit, or even more recently, somebody kind of like a Hightower in his prime, right? These types of guys that can just flat out play football. Uche projects more on that weak side of that formation, but they love what they call a jackbacker. It's somebody that plays on the line of scrimmage and off the line of scrimmage in kind of a hybrid role. It's a mix between a defensive end and an outside linebacker. Okay. And Uche is looking like the guy that's going to play that role a lot. And Kyle Van Noy was brought back to bridge the gap, right, to get to Uche. But Uche's development, I think, has surpassed what they thought, okay. And maybe he might be ready to start in the defense week one.
And you mentioned Hightower. So it's been a couple of years.
Yes.
Lost a step?
He hasn't lost much of a step. No, definitely hasn't lost the weight room. Right, he still can bring it like he always has in terms of hitting ability and stacking blockers up. A lot of people around here call him Boom Tower because of how hard he hits, and he can definitely still bring it. He's such a field general too, so even if he has lost a step athletically, maybe and in space, his ability to get the defense, especially in the front seven, to get into the right defense, get everybody on the same page and lined up correctly, and make sure that they're in the best possible position every single play is extremely valuable to the defense.
Perkins, what about the other rookie? Has he been okay? Has he been quiet? How's his rookie season been so far this summer?
Relatively quiet. I would say with Perkins, they have so many veteran players at that spot, that outside linebacker spot. We mentioned Judon, Van Noy, Uche, Winovich, all ahead of Perkins right now. And he's converting similar to what Winovich did his rookie season. Michigan, Winovich is playing a lot with his hand in the dirt, right?
Yes.
Perkins at Oklahoma is playing in a 4-3 front as a defensive end with his hand in the dirt. Now the Patriots are going to ask him to play up on his feet in a 2-point stance as an outside linebacker. So it's a different spot. I think he's got the physical tools to do it, but he's experiencing a pretty steep learning curve compared to what they were at Oklahoma. He was a down player who was attacking, right? Just get in the backfield, get the quarterback, get the ball carrier behind the line of scrimmage. In New England, as I mentioned with Winovich, much different
Yes.
style of system. So he's going through a pretty steep learning curve right now.
Okay. And by the way, it sounds to me like, and we know that the 3-4-4-3. Okay, it's everybody switches, but it sounds to me like the Patriots might be playing more 3-4.
So they're definitely going to play a ton of 3-4. They have also played some 4-3 over fronts a little bit, where Judon is on the line of scrimmage as a stand-up player, but he's in a spot where typically a 3-point defensive end would
Okay.
be in. So it's a little bit of a hybrid fun. They run it a lot at Alabama. So my guess is that Belichick is taking one from his old friend Nick Saban and rolling with it here with the Patriots. We've seen that front quite a bit in the preseason, and I've made note of it. I've asked around about it because you're not 100% sure what to call Judon, right? Is he a defensive end, or is he a linebacker
Sure.
in that spot? So what I've been told is it's a 4-3 over, and they just stand up the defensive end instead of putting his hand down.
Okay.
But it is an even front. So they've played a little bit of that. That's, in my mind, the 3-4 is always going to be their base, but there are other base in certain matchups is going to be this 4-3 over.
Okay. Let's wrap up with the secondary, and there's a lot to kind of go over here. First of all, the loss of Stephon Gilmore, and we talked about his season last year and the contract and all sorts of questions, and then he gets injured.
Sure.
So what does this do? Because I look and I see, well, wait a second. I see Jalen Mills, and I see
Yes, you do.
Jawan Williams, and
Yes, you do.
okay. I know Jonathan Jones, J.C. Jackson, but it's not that I don't know these guys, Mills and Williams, but I'm not overly impressed by them. So what's it looking like? And is that the major reason they made the trade for Sean Wade?
I would say that the Wade trade was more about competition for Jawan Williams than about Stephon Gilmore.
Okay.
Because Williams he was the 46th overall pick in 2019 by the Patriots and hasn't developed into a
No.
top 50 player in a draft. So they're looking to push him in that third cornerback back. Stephon Gilmore did not practice at all this summer. He's on the PUP list, obviously, to start the season. That was a golden opportunity for Jawan Williams, right? I mean, it's screaming at Jawan Williams to take the bull by the horns here. And he had some good practices. He had some steady weeks against Philadelphia down in joint practices. He was okay. He was good in the Washington game in the preseason, but not great. Right? It's still not a difference maker, still not somebody you can consistently count on as a starter. So they trade for Wade, I think, to push Williams and as a developmental player at the back end of that depth chart. But this is the Achilles heel of the Patriots' entire team. A lot of people point to the quarterback being a rookie. I think they'll manage Mac, right? I think they'll make Mac passable, whether he is Justin Herbert and he's just awesome, or if he's, somebody that has a little bit more of a learning curve ahead of him. They'll manage him to the point where I think he is going to not kill them.
I agree.
He's not going to anchor their team.
That's what I see.
The cornerback position can anchor their team because
Yeah.
J.C. Jackson is a good 2. Is he a good number 1? I'm still not 100% sold. Jalen Mills is an outside corner, is an adventure. Jawan Williams isn't ready. So this is a tough spot for them to be in at that spot. They claim that Stephon Gilmore is still hurt, and that's why he's not going to be out there. The contract is obviously a massive part of it as well. But if it gets to week 6, week 7, and this team is 5-2, and they're right in the thick of it with Buffalo in the division, they needs to find Gilmore back, because this secondary will hurt them
Sure.
eventually. They will get burned about Jalen Mills being out there. And if I'm an opposing offensive coordinator, it's where's Waldo with Jalen Mills, right?
Sure.
Just find the guy that Jalen Mills is covering. Avoid J.C. Jackson, because there's no reason to test it, right? Because he was second in the league last year in interceptions to Xavier Howard. He's a ball hawk. He's a guy that will give up some plays, but he'll also get some back. So if you're the opposing offense, Jalen Mills, Jawan Williams, even Kyle Duggar, who's still developing and coming along at safety in a coverage role, those guys are the ones that I'm targeting all game long. And I'm sure those are the guys that will get picked on.
All right. And as far as the rest of the DBs, I guess the one guy I wanted to ask you also was about is Duggar.
Yes.
So what's up with Duggar? Has he looked like he's in his second year and it's going to be better and they got a role for him specifically that'll work out for him?
I'm not as bullish on Duggar as I was on Josh Uche.
Okay.
Uche, this is one of the, that meme where the guy's walking with his girlfriend and then he looks to the side at the other girl walking by, right? This is what we have done with Kyle Duggar and Josh Uche, because last year it was all Kyle Duggar, right? This guy's going to be great for them. This guy's going to be a star. Now in this preseason, in this camp, it looks a lot more like Josh Uche is that player and not Duggar. Duggar, not to say that Duggar's been bad, but covering tight ends one-on-one is just not his natural role. Right? I mean, he didn't really do it in college. He did it some at the Senior Bowl, and he looked really good doing it down in Mobile. And that's what made the Patriots believe that he could convert into that role. The Patriots were hoping that Kyle Duggar was going to replace Patrick Chung in their defense, and he was going to guard tight ends, play in the box, play closer to the line of scrimmage. The player that Duggar is starting to develop into more resembles Rodney Harrison, I would say, than Patrick Chung.
And nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. A player that is much better when he's free to roam, right? Just let him sit in the middle of the defense at the sticks or in the box and watch the quarterback and either jump routes or attack the ball or come downhill and attack ball carriers or rush the QB. But when you start putting him in man coverage responsibilities, he is vulnerable. He's a player that's still learning how to play that role. It could come eventually. Another comparison that a lot of people have used is sort of like a Jamal Adams type of role versus a Chung type of role. Chung was essentially another cornerback for the Patriots when he was at the end of his career, taking tight ends on an island, one-on-one. That was his responsibility, as well as some things in the box as a run defender. That doesn't seem like it fits Kyle Duggar's skill set the best. He's much better when he's got the eyes in the backfield and he's able to read guys, react to guys, and use his athleticism in the open field.
Do you still believe that that's what they're going to try one more season, as try to force that issue, or how do you see his role looking like?
Well, they need somebody to guard tight ends because Adrian Phillips did it pretty solidly in training camp for a while. Then they went to Adrian Phillips, the veteran safety. Then they went to joint practices with Philadelphia, and Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz had their way with all the Patriots DBs, all the safeties. Phillips, Duggar, they tried Jawan Williams there for a couple of reps in 11-on-11s. That didn't work out so well. Adrian Colbert, who they cut, got an opportunity just to see if they could stop the bleeding with anybody, and it wasn't good. So I don't know. I still think Duggar. The thing with Duggar is great when he's in attack mode. When he's in heat-seeking missile mode and he can just go to the football, he's really, really good. And he's a physical player. He's a very, very strong player and a very athletic player, right? 220, 225 pounds running around at a 4.43, right? That's an impressive athlete. But he is technically not ready to be a man coverage stopper. So they have to find a role for him in this defense. And like I said, over the offseason, Duggar spoke about how he watched old Rodney Harrison tape. He watched a lot of tape on Troy Polamalu as well, and just tried to learn off of their instincts, right, for middle of the field reads. And that kind of feels more of his calling card, is just let him roam. Just let him read and react and see the quarterback and see the football. The second he turns his back to the ball or he's asked to just guard one guy and have a matchup in man
Trouble.
coverage, that's when things get a little bit murky.
Yeah, it's been a problem with the draft, hasn't it? Especially when you're talking about guys from the second and third round that we just went over, whether it's Winovich, whether it's Duggar. And a matter of fact, you got Anthony Jennings, who's out for the year, it
Right.
looks like, and he's done nothing. And that's a surprise to me. No, I don't know. Again, is that a scheme situation? Because at Alabama, yeah, I guess maybe he did seem like an attack dog type of guy. So maybe he
Yeah.
doesn't fit with the Patriots scheme, because I'm surprised that they haven't been able to get anything out of him, and now he's hurt.
Right. I would say the last two drafts have been a lot better for the Patriots. They got Duggar, Uche, Devin Asiasi, who's going to be somewhat of a role at tight end, but maybe not somebody to write home about. But the big one from the 2020 draft is on Wenu, obviously on day 3. You know, a starting caliber offensive lineman on day 3 is a good pick. This year, I mentioned off the top, Mack, Barmore, Ramondre Stevenson. Even if those are the only 3 guys that pan out from the 21 class, that's a great class, right? So that these last 2 drafts have certainly been better, and the Patriots have shook up their front office a lot in the last couple of years. Their scouting process, who's in charge, who's running the show on scouting, Dave Ziegler, Elliot Wolf taking much larger roles in the scouting department in the last couple of years. Max feels like the type of guy that just fits the Patriots, and everybody involved was going to be on board with it. But players like Stevenson, players like Onwenu, I think those are more of the hidden gems that maybe the scouting staff, Uche certainly has kind of been able to pluck, if you will. But they sometimes run into issues with the skill players. Their issues is drafting guys whose speed is going to translate to the NFL game, right? Sony Michel and N'Keal Harry were too slow for the NFL for what the Patriots thought they were getting in the first round. If you draft Sony Michel in the 4th round, it's a great pick, right? First round, not so much. N'Keal Harry, just too slow for the NFL level so far. But what they have found at other spots, I think, has been decent the last 2 drafts. And I still think Duggar is going to be a good player. They just have to find a role for him that fits what they want him to do. But that's going to be on the coaching staff. That's going to be on Belichick, because Duggar's a talented guy. They just need to find a place for him to play, and they need to adapt the system a little bit. They're not going to find a clone of Patrick Chung. Chung was not a Hall of Fame caliber player, but he was a Patriot Hall of Fame caliber player, right? Somebody that was very, very consistent and steady and smart and tough in his role for years. And that's going to be difficult to just pluck a guy like Duggar 1 for 1 and replace Patrick Chung. And they know that.
Doesn't happen. And when it does happen, it usually doesn't happen that seamlessly. You know, maybe it'll take a few more years before you find the guy, or you just never will. All right, give me a prediction on the season. What you truly believe, and I haven't even looked at the schedule myself. I'm sure you got to throw the schedule in there a little bit, but what do you think? What kind of a season are the Patriots going to have, and is it a borderline playoff season?
I do think that they're going to be a wild card playoff team. I don't think they're going to win the division. I think Buffalo is too much for them right now. But eventually, could Mac Jones and Josh Allen have some back and forth in the division? I do think so, but probably too soon for that right now. But this Patriots team last year was 7-9 with a broken Cam Newton, with a bunch of opt-outs. There's a bunch of issues on both sides of the football, all over the place, really. And they still won 7 games. Now they have a better quarterback for their system. They bring in all these free agents. They have a much better roster from top to bottom. I think this is a 10 or 11 win team. And then we'll see what happens, where the cards lie, you know, in terms of the standings, and if that's enough to win a wild card spot. But you don't go 7-9 with a team in shambles and then go backwards the next year after making the improvements that they've made to the roster. It just feels like they'll be able to squeak out a few more wins this year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a successful season as well. How successful? Who knows? It's definitely all about Mac Jones, and I don't think he's going to have a Herbert season. I'm not so sure how he can do that with this roster, but overall, I think it's a great fit. I think Mac Jones is going to work out really well in New England, And I also believe that more than likely they'll have a winning season. But we have to kind of now talk about, it's like when we say 10-win season, that's like last year's 9-win season. So now we got
Right.
to kind of put that into our heads
We do
now.
have to test.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's going to take us
Right.
a little bit. But yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think it's and look, if Tua works out, Mac Jones works out, and Zach works out, it could be a hell of a division for years to come.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, that right there. We haven't had this in a while. Maybe in the AFC East, maybe ever.
Yeah, right.
Where all four teams have young quarterbacks to be excited about, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Patriots fans that are my age are used to just walking all over the division, and that was fun for a while, I suppose. But it's not really very interesting, right? So this will be a lot more interesting. The Bills, as we both have mentioned, are the team that everybody is chasing in the division, but all four quarterbacks are exciting. All four quarterbacks give each team a little bit of hope. So it will be really, really fun. And week 2, we'll see the Jets and Zach Wilson. Week 1, we see Tua.
Yep.
So the Patriots and the Bills actually don't play until later on in the schedule. Week 13 is the first Patriots-Bills game. Okay. So they get the Jets and the Dolphins early, but those the Bills they have to wait on.
Yep, should be a lot of fun. We'll talk about we'll wrap up the first game next week and preview the Jet game. We'll get some film on the Jets in Carolina as well. So as I get to watch Sam Darnold go up against my Jets, which should be a lot of fun.
Ah,
so,
nice.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Oh my goodness. So I watched him in a couple. I watched him in a preseason. I forget which preseason game was it. I think it was he only played in one, I think. And he didn't look like he changed much. So I'm not worried too much about Sam Darnold. The only thing I'm worried about is the old, he can go out there and throw for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns against the Jets and then never do that again the rest of the season because he's going up against his former team. That's the only thing I'm worried about. But it should be fun talking about it next week, and it should be a lot of fun, as you mentioned, because there's going to be 6 of those matchups this season for the Patriots. And by the way, which of the other games, which division for the AFC East?
They are playing, let me think, the NFC South, right? Yeah, Tampa, New Orleans, Carolina.
Oh, that's right, Tampa. Okay. And when is that matchup?
Tampa's week 4 is the return of the king, as some people want to call it around here. And
is that Sunday?
It's on Sunday. It's a Sunday Night Football.
Sunday Night Football. Okay, good.
And not only, Greg, is that a ticket that is breaking records in terms of regular season, that ticket is a Super Bowl ticket right now to buy it. That ticket in the credential to get in the press box for that game is a Super Bowl credential as well, right? I mean, they're talking about putting in auxiliary press boxes for that game and using suites potentially in certain areas of the stadium for press. I mean, this is good. Good Morning America is coming to Foxborough to do a live show the Monday after Bucks Patriots with Michael Strahan and the whole crew. Monday morning after Bucks Patriots. So this is a Super Bowl in Foxborough. And you know that Robert Kraft is loving that because all the attention and all the money is going right into his pocket. But this is the biggest, it might be bigger than the Super Bowl in some respects. Like this is going to be one of the biggest football games in history of the NFL.
What's the week 3 matchup then?
Week 3 is New Orleans. Week 2 is the Jets. And then week 1's obviously against
New Orleans
Miami.
Is where?
Home in Foxborough, yeah.
So it's the Saints and so you got we'll see how that works out because at least it's in Foxborough. You don't have to worry about the whole Superdome thing because nobody knows what's going on there. I'm assuming that they're going to be back to playing again there real soon, right? From what you've heard, or I think so.
I would hope so. I mean, this doesn't sound like it's going to linger quite as long as like Katrina did, for example. Luckily. Hopefully, yeah.
All right, Evan, great job as always. I'm looking forward to talking Patriots football with you all season long once again, and CLNS Media, but also Patriots Press Pass. And how many shows you doing on Patriots Press Pass a week?
So we do daily videos when I'm down there in Foxborough, just stand-up videos. We do those. Pre-game, post-game. We also do, myself and Alex Barth, we have Patriots Beat podcast that we do twice a week.
Awesome. Evan, great job. We'll talk to you again next week.
Sounds good, Greg.